Do you remember a couple of days ago I told you about a farmer out in Oregon who was pinned underneath his tractor? Well, he had two daughters, and his two daughters, ages 16 and 14 at the time, they eventually came home and they decided to take the dog for a walk. And as they were out on their walk, they saw the tractor. And eventually they saw underneath the tractor, they saw their dad. And so they called 911, but they knew there wasn't any time to waste. They needed to try to get that tractor off their dad. These two scrawny high school teenagers, 16 years old and 14 years old. And so they each grabbed a side of the tractor and they lifted. Nothing. And then they lifted again. Nothing. And they lifted again. And they lifted 7 times. So finally they were able to lift this 3,000-pound tractor off their dad and save his life. How did that happen? Why was that able to happen? Sometimes there's no rational explanation. Sometimes it just does. Kind of like, is there any rational explanation for why God would choose to find maybe the greatest missionary that the world would ever see in a guy who was blind and hungry and thirsty and had made his living killing Christians? Because that wasn't easy either. In order for that to happen, in order for God to apply grace onto the life of that man, you know what else would need to happen? It means that God the Father would need to watch his own son suffer under a weight much heavier than the weight of a 3,000-pound tractor. He would need to suffer under the weight of all the world's sins. And he would need to watch him cry out from a cross, cry out for help, knowing that no one, no daughters, no friends, not 911, not even his Father in heaven was going to come in and rescue him. It meant that he would have to watch his own son go through the agony of hell, the hell that we deserve, so that you and I could be set free from the unbearable weight of regret and guilt for all the times that we've sinned against him. And is there any better explanation for why that happened than simply to say that, well, that's who our God is, and that's how he feels about us? I don't know that there is. When Ananias looked at Saul, he saw a dead end. When God looked at the same person, God saw a new beginning. When Ananias looked at Saul, he saw a lost cause. God looked at the same person and he saw a chosen instrument. And what we see in all of this and how God views even the most messed up and broken people on the planet, we see grace. We see grace even in our weakness. And Saul saw that again and again and again. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, he says it this way. He says, "Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.' Therefore," Paul goes on, "I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That's why for Christ's sake I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, and difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am strong." In other words, his weaknesses were a good opportunity for him to see the strength of God's love for him. And this coming year, there's one thing I can guarantee about your life, and you won't even need to look hard for this. You're going to see your weaknesses. You will. So every day, make sure you set aside time to find strength in God's grace. You know, friends, we don't like to talk about our weaknesses because it means admitting that we're weak. The Apostle Paul didn't mind talking about his weaknesses because those were the times when it was most obvious that the Lord had been so abundant with the strength of his love and his grace. And if there have been times in your life where you've seen your weakness, but it's caused you and put you in a position to be able to see the Lord's strength, the strength of his love for you, we'd love to hear about those times so that your story can give some powerful encouragement to the Christian community, just like the Apostle Paul's did. Hey friends, thanks for watching the videos. If you'd like to watch more, just click here to subscribe. You'll get these on a regular basis, and God's going to fill you with some awesome things every time you watch these. We'll see you later.